Okay, welcome back. I want to do some problems that I think will help you get ready for the quiz. This is the quiz on section 6.1 and 6.2. So we're going to start out with problem number 15 on page 485. And your job is to solve for y by factoring. Okay, so we recognize that in order to solve by factoring, we have to have all the terms on the left side equal to 0. That's the first thing we want to do. So we get 3y squared minus 6y plus 3 equals 0. And then because there is a common factor among all three of the terms, I'm going to divide that common factor out. And the reason I do that is that it becomes an easier problem to factor. All right, so now there is no leading coefficient, and this one I hope everyone can see would be simply y minus 1 squared, and so the answer is y is equal to 1. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's try one that's a little bit trickier. Let me go ahead and erase this one because you've done that already. So here we go. This one is a problem that I have just created for you. So let's try this. X minus 5 times x plus 1 equals 27. So we're tempted to simply set x minus 5 and x plus 1 equal to 0 or equal to 27, but we can't do that because it's a zero product property and 27 is clearly not 0. So here's what we have to do. We have to distribute the terms in the parentheses on the left hand side, so we get x squared minus 5x plus 1 is minus 4x minus 5, and then we bring the 27 over and set it equal to 0. So this right here is simply using the FOIL procedure on the two binomials. Alright, so then we get x squared minus 4x minus 32 equals 0. So we say to ourselves, how do we multiply to negative 32 and add to negative 4? And the way we do that is by multiplying negative 8 times positive 4. So my two solutions are 8 and negative 4. 8 or negative 4, I should say. Okay, let's go ahead and do one of the substitution problems. We've done some practice in class. Let's look at this one. And so what I want to do is solve for A. The directions are solve for A by factoring. Okay. So the first thing we need to do is we need to turn this into a quadratic form. So we're going to say a squared is going to be the u. So we rewrite this as u squared plus u minus 2 equals 0. All right. The reason we picked a squared for u is because then to get to a to the fourth we have to take a squared squared. So simple factoring u plus 2 u minus 1 equals 0. So when we solve, we get u equals negative 2, u equals positive 1. But we're not done because we want to solve for a. So if a squared is equal to negative 2, there is no solution. And if a squared is equal to 1, a could be 1 or negative 1. And those are the two solutions. Okay, let's go ahead and do a completing the square problem with a leading coefficient. So your job is to solve for x by completing the square. I'm going to use abbreviations. So here's my equation, 3x squared minus 12x plus 1 equals 0. So we remember that if there is a leading coefficient, before we do anything else, we've got to get rid of it. So we're going to divide both sides by 3, so we get x squared minus 4x, and then I'll put a blank there for completing the square, and then 1 divided by 3 is 1/3, and when I move it to the other side I get negative 1/3. Okay, here's the completing the square part. Half of negative 4 is negative 2, and negative 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. Okay, this becomes x minus 2 squared. And if I add 4 and negative 1/3, oh, I know what we should do. We haven't done this in a while. Let's go ahead and do that shortcut I taught you. So we're going to multiply here, and we get negative 1. And then we multiply here, and we get 12. And then we multiply here, and we get 3. And so this becomes 11/3. All right? Now we take the square root of both sides. We get x minus 2 equals plus or minus square root of 11 over 3. We do not need to in this class ever rationalize the denominator. So if you're in the habit of getting that square root out of the denominator, you don't have to do that anymore. So last step is to say x is equal to 2 plus or minus root 11 thirds. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and do a problem. This is page 498, and it is number 20, and we're going to solve for x, and then what it will say in terms of c. So you remember a problem like this: x squared minus 4x plus c equals 0. And so I'm going to tell you that you're welcome to do the quadratic formula or completing the square on this one. I'm going to go ahead and do the quadratic formula, and then maybe what you want to do, if you need practice, is do this over again by completing the square and see if you get the same answer. Okay, and so what I do is I identify a is 1, b is negative 4, and c is, oh, c, that's kind of nice. So here's the quadratic formula: x equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. I did that really quickly, so feel free to stop, pause the video, and check it out. So I get 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 4c over 2. Okay, and so that's a good answer. A better answer would be to factor inside here a 4 out, and so you would get 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 times 4 minus c all over 2. And then we can simplify that 4 under the radical to 2. And then we have one more step because all of these are divisible by 2, and we get 2 plus or minus 4 minus c. And those are my solutions. So you should check and make sure you can get that by completing the square. Okay, a couple more we're going to do pretty quickly. 3x squared equals 4.2x plus 1.5. This is a calculator quiz, so it is possible that I might give you a question like this and solve using the quadratic formula. Okay, so again, we want to bring everything over just like with factoring and completing the square. You can't do it until you have all the terms on one side equal to 0. All right, and so then you simply want to set a equals 3, b equals negative 4.2, c equals negative 1.5, and then just like we did before, plug it into the quadratic formula and try to get the answer. I want to keep this video relatively short, so I'm not going to finish that one. I'll have you go ahead and finish that, and you can check your answer when you come to class on Monday. All right, last one I want you to do is to look at if I have 3y minus 2x and it's squared equal to 8.2. Sometimes when we solve, just like when we solved here and we ended up with c in the answer, sometimes we solve for y in terms of x, and what that means is you want y on one side and then x on the other. All right, so how we would do this, the first thing we would do is we would get rid of that squared by square rooting both sides. And as I said before, this quiz you'll have a calculator, so you can put 8.2 into your calculator and take the square root, and you get approximately 2.86. Now, of course, I write 2.86 down, but I'm not going to use 2.86. Well, I guess yes I can in this one because I'm not going to get a final answer. It'll be in terms of x. So anyway, now I have 3y minus 2x equals 2.86. So to get the y by itself, I have two things to do. I have to add 2x to both sides, and then when I get 3y equals 2x plus 2.86, I divide both sides by 3. And that is your answer. And you don't have to go any further. If you changed that to 2/3 x and then divided 2.86 by 3 and got plus 0.95, that's acceptable as well, but either one is okay. All right, so some quiz practice. Make sure you understand all these problems. See you in class on Monday.